Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Devahuti, the mother of Kapila Deva, makes her first inquiry. Although one may understand that spirit, soul and matter are different, their actual separation is not possible either by philosophical speculation or by proper understanding. The spirit soul is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, and matter is the external potency of the Lord. The two eternal potencies have some or other been combined. And since it is so difficult to separate one from the other, how is it possible for the individual soul to become liberated? By practical experience, one can see that when the soul is separated from the body has no real existence. And when the body is separated from the soul, one cannot perceive the existence of the soul. As long as the soul and the body are combined, we can understand that there is life. But when they are separated, there is no manifested existence of the body or the soul. This question asked by Devahuti of Kapila Deva is more or less impelled by the philosophy of voidism. The voidists say that consciousness is a product of a combination of matter, and that as soon as the consciousness is gone, the material combination dissolves, and therefore there is ultimately nothing but voidness. This absence of consciousness is called nirvana in Mayavada philosophy. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So while Lord Kapila is explaining the different details about material nature, Devahuti is here making her first inquiry after this description has started. Because in the previous verse, Lord Kapila has concluded one particular section of his description of Sankhya philosophy. When by mature understanding one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. So the whole description has been how to separate oneself as spirit soul from his body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And of course from everything else external to him. And Lord Kapila's conclusion is, by mature understanding, if one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. Now the difficulty experienced by somebody trying to separate the soul from the body, or spirit from matter, is expressed by Devahuti here. She is telling, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? The whatever condition of your understanding. Most people don't understand, but even if somebody tries to understand, just because I have understood I am not the body, I am spirit soul, and I have got full logic or full explanation, does it mean that material nature will release the soul? I am in the clutches of Maya. I was in the clutches of Maya till I didn't understand what is this body, mind, intelligence, false ego, spirit, soul. All this I didn't understand. Now I have understood after either going through a whole philosophical exercise or even through understanding from the right source, from the scriptures or from some learned person in the Vedas. Will material nature release me, the real person, the spirit soul, the individual soul? So Devahuti is expressing doubt. No, I don't think it is possible to get release from material nature simply by this understanding or by simply hearing or reading. The reason she is telling it is not possible is because the spirit, soul and material nature are attracted to one another eternally. What does it mean? That we have been in this material world since time immemorial. Can we trace out the beginning? No, we cannot. How can we understand that we can't trace the beginning? Very simple. I have got this body as a result of my past life. The consciousness at the time of death in a previous life is resulting in this birth in this particular body. Now what about that body? You have to go one step back. Previous to that, I was in another body, and consciousness at the time of death in that previous body resulted in whatever the body I got. So like that you can go up to the beginning of creation. Up to the beginning of creation you can go, because each body is the result of the previous body. So what happens at the beginning of creation? What is the basis of getting a body at the beginning of creation? It is again going back to the previous dissolution. How do I get a body at the beginning of creation? Whatever was my consciousness at the time of dissolution of the entire universe. Based on that karma only, I am still in the material world. If I was completely free from all karma, whenever that is, at the time of dissolution or whatever time, I become liberated. I don't have to stay in the material world. So if I am in the material world, there is a past, there is a history. I cannot be in the material world without a history. So therefore, the scriptures say, Anadi, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Anadi karma phale pade bhavarnava jale tari bare na dekhi upay. Our karma, which is the cause of our material existence, is beginningless karma. Anadi karma phale. Prabhupada translates that song. He says beginningless karma. So it's a fact. We cannot trace the beginning of our karma, of our material existence. Now the scriptures, at least those who accept the scriptures as explaining the reality of what's happening, what's going on, what is the truth. Scriptures say, actually, we are spirit soul. We don't belong to this material world. We belong to Krishna. And we are part and parcel of Krishna. We have an eternal relationship with Krishna. So how can we understand both of these? That I belong to Krishna, I actually don't belong to this material world. Yet now I'm in the material world. And if I try to understand what is the beginning of my material existence, because I don't belong here. So when did I come here? For that, there is no way I can trace the beginning if I try to analyze based on what the scriptures describe. I cannot trace the beginning. Which means, simply means that on my own or by these methods, philosophical speculation or hearing from learned authorities, it is not going to lead me into actually understanding how did I come here? When did I begin my material existence? I cannot ever figure it out. Can never understand. Now, while an intelligent person or a wise person will give up such attempts at philosophical speculation or simply some other method and try to actually find out if there is a different method of understanding what's going on. The method of bhakti yoga, this method of bhakti yoga, it is a totally different approach than all other methods of all other philosophers or learned scholars or even Vedic scholars, non-Vedic scholars. The method of bhakti yoga is entirely different. It stands apart from all other processes, all other methods, all other philosophies. Because this is the only philosophy, only method where we surrender to the Supreme Lord, surrender to Krishna, surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And such surrender is not simply some blind faith. It is not done, such surrender is not done in fear, out of frustration. It is not a reactionary attempt at trying to get freedom from material bondage. No. It is very scientific. It is explained in detail if we approach the right source. Very thorough analysis is given. Who am I? Who is God? What is material nature? Everything is explained. Just like Lord Kapila is explaining the Sankhya philosophy differently than what the atheistic Kapila explains. The atheistic Sankhya philosophers, headed by that atheist Kapila, who's appeared much later than the Supreme personality of Godhead, incarnation of Lord Kapila. This atheist Kapila, he comes to a conclusion of widest philosophy. Widest philosophy. That is explained by Prabhupada here. Devahuti's question is impelled by the philosophy of widism. Widest philosophy, which is the conclusion of the atheist Kapila or the philosophers like him. The Voidists say, what do the Voidists say? That consciousness is a product of a combination of matter. Now, this is a theory. This is a theory of the Voidists. All philosophers have some theory. All philosophers have some theory. It's only the devotees who are actually realized beyond just propounding a theory. Only the devotees are realized fully. Others, they have their own theories, or they follow some other philosopher's theory without realization. Without realization. Or sometimes they have partial realization. Partial realization. So in any case, those who are not realized, their theory, whatever it may be, is ultimately useless. It cannot help a person get freedom from material bondage. All theories, however nicely they are presented, however rigorous they are in analysis, or however much they may claim to be very logical, or they could be experts who seem to be defeating everyone else. Just like in their own field, scientists, when they present their own analysis of this material world or of this body or life or whatever, they have their explanation for their theory, and at least by presenting different scientific evidence, so-called evidence, they seem to be defeating all other explanations or theories. Or they can offer a challenge and say, you cannot prove the existence of soul, you cannot prove the existence of God. So, in their own circle, they have their explanations, they have their following, they have their experiments, they have their proof, everything they have. And this is true not only of the scientists, this is true of many philosophers. There's in medieval times, at least in former times, there were so many schools of philosophy which had very powerful learned scholars who could defeat others and who have written books and taught this philosophy, had many, many followers, disciples, students, professors under them, getting trained and propagating the philosophy. Propagating the philosophy. Of course, in Kali Yuga now, most philosophies don't even survive beyond the immediate person. But in former times, there were very, very powerful philosophers who had their own school of philosophy, and they used to propagate that, and they used to get so many followers who would study rigorously. Just like this Shad Darshana, this atheistic Sankhya philosophy is one of the Shad Darshana, the 6 philosophies. Now in the 6 philosophies, they are all based on the Vedas. All the 6 philosophies are based on the Vedas. Apart from that, there are non-Vedic philosophies, just like the Buddhist philosophy is a non-Vedic philosophy. The Jain philosophy is a non-Vedic philosophy. Charvak philosophy, atheistic philosophy, is non-Vedic philosophy. They don't accept the Vedas. But what is very surprising is there are people who accept the Vedas, the original Vedas, as it is, without any change. But they are expert in interpreting the Vedas. They have their own interpretation of the Vedas. They don't follow parampara. They don't follow parampara in the sense, parampara means the explanation of the Vedas which begins from Krishna. They don't follow that. So they have their origin. One atheist, Kapila, he studied the Vedas, and he explains, Vedas are basically telling that this whole material world is made up of 24 elements. And everything, including you and me, life itself, is a combination of these 24 elements. And what are these 24 elements? They are all different elements of matter. All the 24 elements. That's there in our Vedic scriptures, in Lord Kapila's Devahuti Putra, Kapila. His analysis of material, of matter. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna explains. Mahabhutanya Hankaro, 13th chapter. 5th and 6th verses. So, this analysis is already there in the Vedas. And he has taken that and he is telling nothing beyond this. This entire existence, whatever we can perceive, or we are in this existence in this world, it is simply a combination of these 24 elements. So then how do you explain consciousness? Because consciousness is what differentiates life from matter, living person from dead matter. This is very, very clear. For any intelligent person, wise person, thoughtful person, consciousness is what differentiates life from matter, or living person from matter. So for that, their only explanation is consciousness is a product of combination of matter. Under certain conditions of material combination, there is consciousness. And as long as that combination is sustained, there is living symptoms, there is life, there is living person. Just like they give the example, if you have any food substance, as long as the food is not fermenting or decaying, you don't see any bacteria or living organisms inside that. Correct? As soon as it starts fermenting, immediately you see so many microbes, so many germs, so many things are multiplying, are generated. So their theory is, just like that, anything fermenting, we have experience, anything fermenting, immediately there is life, there is living entities. So their theory is, all life is like that. Consciousness itself is because of a certain material combination. A particular combination. It's not any combination. It's a particular combination. And as soon as that consciousness is gone, I mean the person dies or any living being dies, then the material combination dissolves. It doesn't remain. It dissolves. And that also we experience. If something ferments, then so many living entities, but that fermentation is not going to go on forever. It's going to break down, and ultimately it is completely earth, water, fire, air, ether, whatever. Everything is dissolved. The whole combination is dissolved, finished, over. So for some time there was some activity of generating some microbes or living entities or some whatever, life. But that is just temporary, that's all. So like this, so much of living entities are generated and they don't stay, they die. When the consciousness is gone, finished, over, everything is dissolved. So this is the way they explain this. Of course, they have got Vedic statements which they interpret. So many original Vedic statements they interpret. So Srila Prabhupada says, I shall read this from the 87th chapter of the Krishna book, 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. The prayers were personified Vedas. From the subject matter under discussion, we can gain a clear understanding of the difference between the impersonalists and personalists. Essentially, the impersonalists are of two categories. They are both called Mayavadis, but their philosophies are known as Mayavada, but there are two kinds of Mayavada. The impersonal conception recommends merging into the existence of the Supreme, and the voidist philosophy recommends making all material varieties void. These are two kinds of philosophers. Those whose ultimate aim is that they want to merge into the existence of the Supreme, and that Supreme is the absolute truth or whatever in real existence. Everything else is simply doesn't exist. Non-existence of matter or this material world or the material body or the individual self, whatever, separate existence of ourself, everything is simply non-existent. Asat. Asat. And Sat is the Supreme, and merging into the Supreme is the way of liberation. And the voidist philosophy says, ultimately there is only void. Shunya. Nirvishesha Shunyavada. Nirvishesha is some impersonal truth or impersonal Brahman, whatever you may call. Impersonal reality is the ultimate reality, ultimate truth. Merging into that impersonal Brahman or impersonal truth or impersonal reality is the way of liberation, ultimate perfection. And for the voidist, there is only Shunya. Ultimately, there is only Shunya. And making all material varieties void is the way of liberation. They call this Nirvana. Both these philosophies are known as Mayavada. According to the Vedic understanding in Parampara, both of these are called Mayavada philosophy. Merging into the impersonal truth or whatever, impersonal reality, and this voidist philosophy of making all material varieties void, Shunya. Both are called Mayavada. Certainly, the cosmic manifestation comes to a close and becomes void when the living entities merge into the body of Narayana to rest until another creation. See, how can these people come up with a wide philosophy based on the Vedas? Because the Vedas explain at the end of time, a certain time, Brahma's life, end of Brahma's life, everything is destroyed, even Brahma has to die. And what happens? Everything enters into the body of Narayana. So, what do the Voidists say? They say that there is either an impersonal condition or a void condition. Because in this world, no more material world, no more planets, no more living beings. Nothing is there. So they say that ultimately there is an impersonal situation or a void situation. Shunya or Nirvishesha. And here Prabhupada is telling an impersonal condition, but this condition is never eternal. The cessation of variegatedness of the material world and the merging of the living entities into the body, the Supreme, are not permanent because the creation will take place again, and the living entities who have merged into the body, the Supreme, without developing their Krishna consciousness, will appear in this material world when there is another condition. This is also explained in the Vedas. Conveniently, they left out this. This is also explained in the Vedas. Bhagavad Gita itself says, Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. Again and again there is dissolution and there is creation. The Bhagavad Gita confirms the fact that this material world is created and annihilated. This is going on perpetually. And conditioned souls who are without Krishna consciousness come back again and again whenever the material creation is manifest. If such conditioned souls take advantage of this opportunity and develop Krishna consciousness under the direct instruction of the Lord, then they are transferred to the spiritual world and do not have to come back again to the material creation. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, you see Krishna explaining this. That yad gatva nanivartante tad dhama paramam mama parastasmatu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha. There is another world that is transcendental to this manifest and unmanifest material creation. So, it is said therefore that the voidists and impersonalists are not very intelligent because they do not take shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. What's the difficulty? After studying all the Vedas, they will not surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or to the Supreme Lord, Narayana. Simply they will theorize, oh, Narayana means something impersonal or something void. Because in our present condition, as Prabhupada says in the purport, the soul and the body or spirit and matter can never be separated and studied independently. Where do we get all this knowledge or understanding what is spirit, what is matter? Only from the Shastra. In our experience or trying to do some experiment or even analysis, can you separate soul from matter? No. As soon as the soul leaves the body does not exist anymore as body. And whenever there is life or wherever there is life, it is always in this material world, always life is within a body. Embodied life or embodied soul only we can have experience or we can see. So where is soul without body, or where is body without soul? Never possible in this material world. So therefore, many times Prabhupada says, in the Bhagavad Gita he says, the proof of the soul separate from the body is only possible to be understood and realized by accepting the authority of Shruti, the Vedas. There's only proof, only way of understanding and realizing by following the Vedic process of realization. There is no other way. Beyond this, there is no possibility of any experiment, analysis, theorizing, studying. No, it's not possible. Therefore, the conclusion is, one has to take shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord and follow the Vedic recommendation, surrender to the Supreme Lord. And under his shelter, what happens? Everything becomes understood, and not only that, you understand everything very clearly, Krishna will actually give you liberation. When Devavati says, will material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Not until you take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And this is what exactly the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, prayers by the demigods to the Supreme Lord Krishna in the womb of Mother Devahuti, Mother Devaki. Garbhastuti. In that, Anadruta Yushmadangrayaha Aruhya Krichrena Param Padam Tataha Patantyadho Anadruta Yushmadangrayaha. One of the prayers the demigods offer to Krishna in the womb of Devaki is that those who are not taking shelter of your lotus feet, even if they rise up to the impersonal Brahman, up to the spiritual sky, they fall down if they refuse to take or fail to take shelter of your lotus feet. However much they might have performed severe austerities and detached themselves from matter and material things, they cannot remain in that position of so-called liberation. It's not real liberation. It is a temporary situation. A temporary situation. So, those who fail to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord can never get permanent liberation, ultimate liberation. Because they are less intelligent, these voidists and impersonalists take to different types of austerities, either to attain the stage of nirvana. What is nirvana? Which means finishing the material conditions of life, or to attain oneness by merging into the body of the Lord. In any case, all of them fall down again because they neglect the lotus feet of the Lord. This is the understanding. This whole voidist philosophy, it is a erroneous explanation of the Vedas or of what is the truth or what is the reality. Either atheistic or theistic, or accepting the Vedas in a wrong way, interpreting the Vedas. This voidists and the impersonalists, both are called Mayavadis according to these scriptures. Shunyavada, Nirvishesha. Both of them, they ultimately fail to attain real liberation. Because they are not taking shelter of Krishna, Krishna will not award them liberation till they actually surrender and say, Krishna, I want to come back to you. I want to take shelter of you. I want to be under your protection. Until then, there is no possibility of their liberation. That's what is being explained. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.